Once upon a time, there were 3 little girls.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that?
Welcome to a Monday edition. I stopped that video a little early, but welcome to. Oh, oops, let me fix my sound. Okay, give it 5 seconds to kick in.
All right, there we go. Welcome to RBN Live Mondays. You might be asking, where's Nick? Nick actually, his birthday is tomorrow, and so some of his family has already began. You know, everybody can't celebrate on his birthday, so some of his family has already began to celebrate with him. So he's out doing some family stuff, and I said I still don't want it to come on and represent these stories because we got too many. We can't let them pile up. So welcome. I'm your host for today. I am CJ. In real life, you can call me Jay. We got a lot of people already in the chat. Welcome everybody in the chat. So I thought it was pretty fitting to start with this video here for what we're going to be talking about today. And but the overall topic, like the overall the overall topic that kind of is the umbrella to all of the other segments is this: the results of worldwide pro-Palestinian protests. And for example, let me tell you which stories we're going to be touching upon today. Meet the Press AOC lies about Joe Biden and Shills for genocide. So this is the result of pro-Palestinian protests. And then you have Nancy Pelosi saying pro-Palestinian protesters are Putin puppets, basically. We have John Fetterman trolls pro-Palestinian protesters. That's the result of the worldwide pro-Palestinian protests. And then the last story is Bill Maher says college kids love Hamas. Now, not to say that would be bad if it were true. It's just simply it's simply not true. So those are the stories, the segments we're going to be covering in the overall topic of the results of worldwide pro-Palestinian protests. So let's start there. when October 7th hit, and Nick and I, we commented on this in the stream. We watched corporate news was absolutely unbearable. 60-minute show, 60 minutes, wall to wall, was pro unhinged Israeli. That's how it was, wall to wall. And then maybe a month to 6 weeks after that, if you would have flipped on those same networks, the coverage, I wouldn't say completely different, but it shifted to 100% to maybe 90-10, 90-15. I'm sorry, 85-15, something like that. And that is solely, in my opinion, because of the protests. And this has been sustained protests up until yesterday. There was some video, and I'm sure there was some protests today. I just haven't seen it. But up until yesterday, Rome was at a protest in Detroit 2 days ago. So all of this ongoing protest is worldwide protests is having sort of these repercussions. We already saw with the college presidents and the push in Congress and everywhere about labeling anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. So these are all results of the massive pro-Palestinian protests. So if you think the steps that you're walking in if you're able to be in this protest, or if you're disabled and you're in a wheelchair, however means you're getting around in these protests, and you're just thinking, what am I really doing? This is it. You're seeing in the coverage, and we have been seeing in the coverage on corporate media where they have to at least give lip service. You're also seeing the Biden administration give sort of lip service, very, very small lip service, like very, very small, although it's still lip service. This is all because of the protests. So make sure you keep up the protests. That's my monologue to get started. So let's get into the presentation. Now, that was just a funny little video to get us started with. But let's get into the actual presentation for today. We're going to start actually with the AOC Meet the Press video. So if you hadn't seen it, AOC goes on to Meet the Press this past Sunday, which was yesterday. So she goes on Meet the Press and is interviewed by Kristen Welker, I believe her name is. And of course, it's about Joe Biden. This is the election year. And of course, it's about without talking about his numbers specifically, they have to talk about what's causing his numbers to go down. So they have to kind of talk about what's happening in the Middle East, because she's not typically anyone they would lean on to talk to about foreign affairs. You know what I mean? On the left, they would go to somebody who's part of like an intelligence committee or some sort of military oversight committee or something like that. But anyway, we're going to get into the video, but this is what I said after watching the video. I clipped it and put it on Twitter. And this is just my brief sort of description before we get into the video. Meet the Press. I'm sorry, let me just read all of it. Full segment. AOC goes on Meet the Press to shield for Genocide Joe. Lots of word salad here. Bring dressing. Meet the Press. Do you think Biden is the strongest candidate to face Trump? And AOC's response, quote, yes, especially when you look at the field with Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson. So that couldn't let Marianne Williamson feel good. This woman, this is me now back to my text. This woman is being groomed to be Nancy Pelosi. AOC answers why she thinks Biden is struggling with young voters and voters of color. AOC says New Hampshire prove Trump has significant vulnerabilities. I don't know how she comes up with that. Now, this is not long, but it's a 10-minute video. I don't think we're going to get to all of it. We're just going to get to the part concerning Joe Biden and Occupy Palestine. But I'm gonna try to play as much as I can. I don't want to make too many promises. Let's say it's 60 minutes, 60 seconds at a time. Let's see, make sure I try to do that. So let's listen.
Welcome back. President Biden's campaign rallies this week were interrupted more than a dozen times by protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, even unfurling a banner reading, quote, Genocide Joe. Now, some of President Biden's senior aides are becoming increasingly concerned his support for Israel's war in Gaza is damaging his reelection effort, with cratering support from progressives and particularly young voters. Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Congresswoman, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we really appreciate your being here. We are going to get to the situation in the Middle East in just a moment, but I do want to ask you about the president's reelection campaign. As you know, in some of these key battleground states, he has some real vulnerabilities. Why do you think he is struggling against former President Donald Trump, someone who's been indicted 4 times and who's now been slapped with this $83 million civil suit?
Now, that's right at the 1 minute mark, right before she answers. So what do you think her answer will be? Put that in the chat. I'm going to throw it up. What do you think her answer will be versus what do you think her answer should be? If you could put that in very short, concise way, I'll throw that up on the screen. My guess, and this is now I can give you my guess before. Now, obviously, I've seen this video, but now let me think back to what I was thinking she was going to say at the time. When I was watching it. One, I thought she was going to answer the question. I knew it was going to be a word salad, but I thought she would actually answer the question of why does she think Joe Biden has these vulnerabilities in these very important states for his reelection. I thought she would give some sort of roundabout logic, like disinformation or something like that. That's what I was thinking she was going to give. Now, what she should say, because this is her opportunity. I believe she's one of the people who has called for a ceasefire. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. I believe she's one of the people who called for a ceasefire. She could say, or she should say, she's Joe Biden, President Joe Biden is losing in these demographics because of his policy of supporting. Now, if she doesn't feel comfortable with the word genocide, with supporting this murderous, I don't know if that's even better than genocide, but we're going to go with it. With this murderous regime with weapons, and they don't, young people are not cool with that. She can say it plainly like that, or she should say it plainly like that. Now, let's see what some of you think she might say. Let's see right here. Ashria, come on, CJ. Do you really think AOC would answer the question and not word salad? No. You're right. I didn't think you're right. Did I think she would? I would. So I shouldn't have said she would say yes or no to the question. So she wouldn't necessarily answer the question. I thought she would stay on topic of the question. That's a better way of saying it. Not answer it, but stay on topic with the word salad. So to your point. So yeah. Well, I don't know what this means, but I'll read it. Actually, CJ, the butler who does my grocery shopping says that inflation is way down. That's pretty funny. Now it's related but separate about Bidenomics, because all the people who are chiming in happen to be rich people. Chopped up. Well, Kristen, there's the Marco, then there's the micro, and I should have said macro, and then there's the micro, because she did that in an interview. The micro and the macro. That was one of her worst interviews, by the way. Let's go with this one. The president is doing very well. What she said is what she's going to say. Let's see. All right, I think that's enough. Let's play it. Let's see what she says. We're gonna go another minute before comment.
Well, I think we can take a look at the overall landscape here. It's not just what we're talking about with President Biden, but former President Trump also has extraordinary vulnerabilities. We saw that in New Hampshire. The fact that he is a former sitting president, head of his party, virtually everyone else has dropped out and endorsed him. And still, as we just saw, Nikki Haley came, she cleared about 43% in New Hampshire, bodes very not well for Donald Trump and his ability to win a general election. When it comes to President Biden, I think we need to really focus and understand that young people are a very strong part of this electorate. We have a diverse coalition in the Democratic Party that has its own concerns, whether it is what's happening in Gaza or any other number of issues. But right now, I think November is going to be about the coalition we can put together and the policy progress we can make between now and then.
And do you think President Biden is the strongest person to take on former President Trump, given everything you've just said?
We're at the 2-minute mark, so we'll pause on that answer. But we're going to analyze the answer to the first question before we get to the second question about him being a strong candidate. And I took a couple of notes here so I wouldn't forget. Because the reason we stop is so we don't forget. We stop at each one, but we're trying not to do that. So I took a couple of notes, and let's address some of what she says here. So she doesn't answer the question at all. I guess you could say she stays on topic if the topic is vulnerabilities, but to me, the topic was Biden vulnerability. So no, she doesn't stay on topic. She doesn't answer the question, and she doesn't stay on topic, and she doesn't stay on topic. She pivots to Trump, and then this is what the liberal media, corporate media, has been trying to do about New Hampshire. They're trying to pretend like, in the same way they pretend as if the midterms of 2022, it was a Democratic win. If you let them tell it, you would think that Democrats won seats. Democrats lost. But the way they talk about it is as if they won. And in this same case, the same applies here with the New Hampshire primary. Donald Trump won this by over 50% of the vote. But liberal media, along with Nancy Pelosi Jr. here, aka AOC, they're pretending like somehow New Hampshire was a loss. Now, understand sort of a side satellite issue point to make here. Understand they're keeping Nikki Haley in the race longer so that it's less time that Joe Biden has to face Donald Trump. And I'm talking about the Democrats and the liberal media is propping up Nikki Haley to keep her in so that it doesn't have to be a one-on-one matchup with Donald Trump. The next thing is that word salad. This is very not well. Not well. That was a funny quote. I'm gonna play that back. And now when I said earlier what I thought she should have done is take the opportunity to say the reason young people are the reason support for Joe Biden from young people is waning is because of his stance in Gaza. I support a ceasefire. He should support a ceasefire, and that would help a lot of young people vote for him. She could say something along those lines. Instead, she goes, it's Gaza or something else. That's what she does. What was the last one? I think that was it. All right, so I'm going to play I'm going to rewind it, not all the way, but a little bit back to hear some of this here. So from right about here, the last 25
understand that young people are a very strong part of this electorate. We have a diverse coalition in the Democratic Party that has its own concerns, whether it is what's happening in Gaza or any other number of issues. But right now, I think November is going to be about the coalition we can put together and the policy progress we can make between now and then.
And
she's saying now the key part, another key part, she said the policy progress we can make between now and then. This is her saying, you guys have a chance to change this, but you need to make a policy change. So it depends on the policy progress between now and then. Right now is full-on support for Israel, no ceasefire. She's saying there needs to be a policy change. Boy, has this person changed. Let's listen to some more.
And do you think President Biden is the strongest person to take on former President Trump?
Do you think President Biden is strong enough to take on Donald Trump? We all know the answer to that is no. And the polls have been saying that for several months. And then they go, what are you talking about, polls? Now that's the whole thing. Then they were saying at the time when it was 1 or 2 polls coming out and saying this, forget these polls. These are outliers. We worry about the trend. The trend is this now. Now it's forget trends, forget polls. But what I thought she would answer to this question, now that I think back before I watched it, I thought what did I really think? I thought she would go, because I've heard her say something like this along the lines where she goes, I think President Biden could beat Donald Trump. I also think there's a lot of other great Democrats like Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer that could also beat Donald Trump. I think we have a lot of strong Democrats. That's her trying to not be so in your face to the left side of the spectrum. That's how she phrases it when she's trying not to be so in your face support for Joe Biden. But considering his numbers, I believe the establishment, forget what the dilly-dallying. You need to go full on, no, we're down with Joe Biden. But let's continue. Here's her answer.
Trump, given everything you've just said, Congresswoman?
I think what we have right now, what we've seen in New Hampshire, he is virtually the nominee of the party. His turnout in New Hampshire is actually not something to ignore. We saw from a write-in campaign, remember, President Biden wasn't even on the ballot in New Hampshire. He won overwhelmingly with turnout that even exceeded Obama 2012 turnout when Obama was on the ballot. And so there are quite a few.
So here is where AOC is developing her propaganda. She's understanding different propaganda techniques. And number one propaganda technique is the ability to say a line or a phrase or make an argument, knowing that the audience may not be privy to some information. Or that is your hope. That is who you're trying to get. And you know that's the vast majority of the people who are listening to you. Let me rewind and let her give her full here.
Is actually not something to ignore. We saw from a write-in campaign, remember, President Biden wasn't even on the ballot.
My apologies. I said that what I was going to do, and I didn't give the argument. What I'm saying by saying that is that she's a propaganda tactic. But so she's trying to say that Biden is doing this great job in New Hampshire, or what happened in New Hampshire is an indication of how strong a Biden candidacy is. Do we want to talk about the write-in campaign and how that was fully orchestrated, executed by the Democratic infrastructure? Like, you want to pretend like that wasn't what was going on? That because he wasn't on the ballot and because of the optics of these lost, there was a lot of resources put into this write-in campaign by the establishment. And she's trying to make it seem like it was some sort of grassroots thing. But let's listen. Let's continue to listen to AOC.
ballot in New Hampshire. He won overwhelmingly with turnout that even exceeded Obama 2012 turnout when Obama was on the ballot. And so there are quite a few indicators in his strength in New Hampshire. We will see what happens in South Carolina, and of course, when we get to important primaries like Michigan.
So, but and just to be clear, though, do you think the president's the strongest person to take on Mr. Trump if he is the nominee? It's still an if.
So she doesn't answer the question, and this is literally one of the few times. First off, these corporate anchors, they don't do follow-ups on any of the war stuff or any of the economic. They don't do any follow-ups. You know who they always do follow-ups on? Leftists who need to tote a establishment line. So, no, AOC, you're not gonna get away with not putting your reputation on the line here. Is Joe Biden the strongest candidate? And a lot of times the anchor doesn't know if said person, in this case AOC, is going to answer it the right way. They just think you have been put in this position. Are you going to do the right thing? And I'm going to pressure you into this corner to answer this question, which she does. Now, let's see if she actually answers it this time.
Yes, and I mean, especially when we look at this field, we have, Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson. President Biden, I think without question, among that field is the strongest nominee.
You have said in the
Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. Remember that time Marianne Williamson thought she was gonna be like the only one running, and then Cornel West got in and took the entire air out of her campaign. Like, before, it was just a discussion of why the left should use Marianne Williamson candidacy. When Crystal Ball introduced her with a little bit of assist from Brianna Joy Gray, when they tried to cultivate this campaign, not knowing that RFK Jr., no one thought RFK Jr. or Cornel West. That I didn't hear it. I didn't hear like rumors or anything like that until, it was more imminent that both of them were going to be running. So that's when they wanted all of us to put our eggs in the basket of Marianne Williamson. To fall from that in such a short amount of time, because literally she has been off the radar. She was barely on the radar, but she has been literally kicked off the radar ever since Cornel West has entered the race. But let's listen to a little more of AOC here.
In the past, it's not just enough for Democrats to talk about what they are running against. You want the president to be talking about what he's running for. Do you think in this very moment, President Biden is doing a good enough job explaining to voters why they should vote for him and not just against former President Trump?
Now, you see, she does sort of lock her in with the question by already implying what sort of messaging should be done. Not, is President Biden doing enough to get the votes of people? It's, is he doing enough to explain all the great things he's already done? Now, I guess both the answer to those would be no. But I'm of the belief he hasn't done anything. So, but some of the top things they always say that President Biden, they love to point to the Inflation Reduction Act when they talk about climate change, and I always tell you that's a sinking boat with one person putting water from the ocean into the boat and another person in the boat putting water from the inside of the boat into the ocean. It's like is some good and some bad, so it sort of washes itself out. But then consider that, and you stack that against a lot of the other things he's done against climate, like approving the project that Joe Manchin wanted to get done, some mountain project, I forget the full name, the Willow Project. and so on. But let's continue with the video so we can move on to the next segment.
Trump.
I think we can certainly do more to be advancing our vision. And I believe that we have a strong vision that we can run on. You know, I think, and for what it's worth, the president has said, if you give me the House and if you give me the Senate and reelect me to the presidency, we will codify abortion rights. And
they're going to do it this time, everybody. They're going to codify abortion rights. So if you are really an advocate for abortion rights, if you are truly that, not somebody who's in it and doesn't care about what party, you are just in it for the right, what do you think about a person like AOC from a party who has had many times the opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade, who has had the majority, who has had a president say he was going to do it and didn't do it? This time, they're going to do it, though. What I don't understand is, how do you fall for this every 4 years? How are you still falling for this if you're falling for this? I don't get it. But let's get through this video so I can get to the Nancy Pelosi and John Fetterman.
In this country will codify reproductive rights. I think we can do more. I think we need to be talking more about healthcare. Of course, me as a progressive, I want to see the age of Medicare drop, whether it's to 50, as the president has discussed earlier, or to 0, as is my preference, to extend Medicare to all people in the United States of America. But I believe that we can be doing more. We can talk even more about the fact that public colleges and universities should be tuition free or reduced. The president has advanced student loan forgiveness just this month for people who have taken out SAVE loans under $12,000. They will see their loans wiped out. But I do believe that advancing that affirmative vision is going to be very, very important, as well as really laying out and showing between now and November through our governing decisions.
What does it say about our politics when a person or people, but in this case, let's just talk specifically about AOC, and I'll bring in the other people later. But what does it say about United States politics when a person who claims to have some sort of ideological belief can support a candidate who has their ideological beliefs, like a Bernie Sanders, but in the same breath turn around and support a candidate who says they'll veto Medicare for all? A candidate who's starting a war in the Middle East. A candidate who used the Senate parliamentarian not to go further with the $15 minimum wage. What is the use in having beliefs if this is the pivot that you can make? What is the use? But this is what the professional managerial class is able to do. Because if your beliefs are not sort of rooted in a need, rooted in struggle, rooted in something happening to you, you can flip-flop. So take, for example, the Arab and Muslim population in Detroit, in Michigan, who's taking a stand. They and their families are actually involved. It's happening to them and their family. What's happening in Palestine? So do you think, so you see them having their abandoned Biden campaign because they can't flip-flop on the issue. They can't go back and forth. Now, it's a whole nother topic to say why were they even supporting him in the first place. That's a whole another topic. But the point being, the professional managerial class has a lot of times don't have any skin in the game, so it's just philosophical thoughts, and philosophical thoughts can always just be manipulated for the moment. We're getting to the end of the part I want to show, but let's listen to a little more. They're going to pivot in a little bit.
Our governing decisions, when we have that power in the White House, what we are willing to do with it.
Congresswoman, to that point, has the Biden campaign reached out to you and said, we want you to help reelect President Biden? How do you see your role and the role of progressives in this reelection effort?
I see my role overall as really trying to expand the power of movements.
Have they reached
in the
out to
United
you,
States of
Congresswoman?
America and peoples? We've been in contact with the been in contact with the Biden administration throughout my term and throughout his term as well. And I know that he has been in contact, with many members of Congress. But I think what is most important is that. And in terms of my role, I think my role is in allegiance to people's movements across this country, in the labor movement that had extraordinary gains last year, whether it was the Teamsters, whether it was UAW's historic contract.
Do you know now Nick always says people like AOC and Bernie Sanders are here to make socialists look like buffoons. And
whether it was UAW's historic.
Another thing AOC and Bernie Sanders are here to mislead you on is being an advocate for labor. So you have this person on the screen, and Bernie Sanders can be included, who broke a strike. But she's an advocate for labor. We have Joe Biden, who's committing a genocide or helping to support a genocide in occupied Palestine. And you have him literally breaking a strike by signing legislation, the railroad strike. But our media call him the labor president. It goes back to what I was just saying a second ago about the professional managerial class. There's no ideology. Meanings don't mean what they mean. It is just amazing because there's another example. How do you explain how the supposed left cable news network has Bush era hosts, but somehow that's still the left network? You explain that one to me. Nicole Wallace, part of the Bush Cheney administration. You got former RNC chair Michael Steele hosting the show. Like, because policy doesn't make any difference. Policy beliefs is a negotiable, apparently, in the professional managerial class. Let's let her give an answer to this about labor. Finish her answer here, and then we're going to move on.
Historic contract, whether it is the bubbling labor fights that we are seeing across the country. I think we have, and our responsibility is to make sure that those fights are protected. A climate movement that has built such extraordinary power that just this past week, the Biden administration actually announced a pause on all liquefied
Oh, that was a bold-faced lie she just said there. He has done so much on climate. What about the Willow Project? What about opening all these lands up to drilling? What about drilling permits? And understand why Biden is pausing. It's not because of some sort of power that groups like the Sunset Movement is built up, because there is none. What power have they built up? It's an imaginary world that the NATO left, the professional managerial class, the progressive Democrats, it's an imaginary world, a fantasy world that they live in when they talk about they're having these movements, the Medicare for what Medicare for all movement do you have now? We need to do this revolution. Marianne Williamson said this revolution at the ballot box. A revolution at a fucking corrupt system ballot box? Wow. All right, I'll rewind it and let her finish this point that she's making here, and then I don't want to have to say this again. Second time I'm saying this, so let's let her make this final point.
Really trying to expand the power of movements.
Have they reached
in the
out
United
to you,
States of
Congresswoman?
America and peoples? We've been in contact with we've been in contact with Congress, but I think what is most important is that, and in terms of my role, I think my role is in allegiance to people's movements across this country. In the labor movement that had extraordinary gains last year, whether it was the Teamsters, whether it was UAW's historic contract, whether it is the bubbling labor fights that we are seeing across the country, I think we have, and our responsibility is to make sure that those fights are protected. A climate movement that has built such extraordinary power that just this past week, the Biden administration actually announced a pause on all liquefied natural gas export facilities, additional ones moving forward. And that is not just because of the Biden administration. And I want to be very clear about that. That is because of absolute organized and committed organizing by activists and communities that are being impacted on the ground, whether you're a unionized labor worker or whether you're a frontline climate activist, and having an
This is literally a make-believe world that she's describing. To spin a pause, the word you're using gives away. This is a pause. You have you've built up, or these climate organizations have built up extraordinary power to get a pause because his poll numbers are low. Do you think there will be a pause if his poll numbers was 46 right now? You're acting like he's doing a pause other than trying to reach young people. And right after the election, you're going to see how he's going to hit the play button. Truly disgusting how she's trying to spin this, but I'm out of time for this particular clip. If you want to go watch it, it's already on YouTube. Meet the Press. There's about another 4 minutes in the segment, but we have made the point and belabored the point. So let's move on to some other, or our next topic in the overall series of the results of worldwide pro-Palestinian protests. And that interview that you just saw on Meet the Press is sort of an example of that. They're talking about his poll numbers. They're trying to see what can he do. This is all because of the protests and the reaction to what's going on in occupied Palestine. Actually, let me show you. Wait. Oh, no. This is the one. I just wanted to show you what Aaron said. Aaron Mate, he says, it makes sense that someone who wants you to vote for Genocide Joe can't admit that Joe is supporting genocide. Let's get to the next topic. And then that next topic will be Bernie blames everyone. Let's go down here, and we're gonna start here. And then we got some other receipts here. So we're gonna pivot to something it's truly amazing that this guy does here. Let me put up a different banner here. Okay, I think I spelled it right. All right, so this is the next segment. I'm going to read a couple of your chats, and then we're going to get to this next segment. But the next segment, I'll just tell you, kind of give you a brief summary. Bernie Sanders acts like we have short-term memory in this next segment. You'll see what I mean. Do I have any headlines here? Let's start with the headline. If you hadn't seen it, Bernie Sanders actually has written an opinion piece. So this is what we're going to be kind of covering along with that tweet. But let's look at some of your comments just to check in with everybody. Where's everybody watching from? What city are you in? If you need to get in contact with any of us, or if you just want to shout us out, or you're interested in any of the chapters, here is our email, info@revblacknetwork.com. Make sure you write that down. And then if you want to join our mailing list, join it at Substack, and it's revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. You can follow us or join our mailing list. Is not following us, but join our mailing list on Substack. Here's our website, Revolutionary Blackout Network. It's our full name.com. Just spell out our full name.com. You can check out things like merchandise, things like pictures of the renovation of the library in Detroit, things like our community outreach, what we believe in, chapter pictures, other sort of pictures, our summits. There's a lot of different things you can find out on our website. All right, so let's see where people are from. Brooklyn. First one I saw. So we have Jeffrey from Brooklyn. Another segment. This politician is a fraud. We've known this for almost a decade now. That's a comment from Rumble. I'm loving how Rumble comments. I don't know if you've seen it in the chat. Rumble comments are now in the chat. StreamYard has updated their system, and it is now in the chat. Let's see where some other people are from. Portland, Oregon. Shout out to Portland, Oregon. Sheila. And we got Zarik in Detroit, right? That's Rome's neck of the woods. We got Monterey, California. That's a little ways from me, but it's in California, so that's close. What's up, Robert? Let's see. Any other? Here's another one in Michigan. Love the Michigan family out here representing. That's Junior and Flint. Any other city shout outs here that I'm scrolling up? Any other city shout outs? I don't see any scrolling up. I'll go all the way to the bottom. There's Dana in Chicago. What's up, Dana? And then, wow, we have Vicky in Bernie Land, Vermont. And Shura's in Canada. We have focus and keep it on politics in Arkansas. We have, I think that is Ian Henderson in Colorado Springs. That's actually a possible state. I could be moving to a battleground state actually this year for the I'm not moving for the election, but the wife got a new gig, so we may be moving, and all of the choices of states are all battleground states. So Colorado's one of them, Arizona, Nevada, Texas. It's not Texas. Middle America. I don't know. I know there's 4 or 5. But anyway, so what's up from Colorado? Puerto Rico, getting some sun in my hammock. Wow. Javier's in Puerto Rico. All right. Okay, I see one more, and we see Amanda Brinkley. I love the name Brinkley. Amanda Brinkley. Charlotte, North Carolina, and I think that's West PA, Western PA. Niho. All right, so we got another one in Canada where Pilgrim, and then we got somebody in ATL, Cop City, USA. All right, so now we got a super chat I got to read. My bad, almost missed it here. Super chat: Dems with Roe are like Lucy and the football with Charlie Brown. They're talking about Dem with Roe v. Wade, how they're using Roe v. Wade right now, or will be. And you saw AOC in that clip. Dems swear that this time they will codify Roe, that's the football, and are not lying. Voters, Charlie, choose to vote blue, try to kick the ball, and Dems take it away. Love the breakdown. ARJ 1997. Love the breakdown and the super chat. Thank you so much. This one from Paul says, how do you say that? I read. We know about genocide. Am I saying that right? Let me see if I can get a pronunciation of that. I have this. What is the word again? Let me see on the screen here. I don't know what that is. I wish I knew, and it's not pulling up. But thank you for the super chat anyway. All right, so let's get into the next topic here. This is meaning to be a little bit shorter stream, but maybe it's going to be ending up to be. Oh, they've corrected it. Iris. That's because I looked it up. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not coming back as anything. So it was a typo. So my bad. I didn't understand it to be a typo, but thank you for that. I should have put it together. It's literally just one letter off. So my apologies for that. I'm Irish. We know about genocide. Shout out to the Irish. Solidarity to the Irish. Always showing up. Always loving. Speaking to Irish brothers and sisters about the revolution and some of the things, some of the same sort of colonialism that they've been through. So solidarity to the Irish. Thank you for that. All right, so let's get into this next topic. Now Bernie Sanders wrote this op-ed, and it's titled "The U.S. Must Act to End the Gaza Genocide." And again, this is written by Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm sure he's written stuff before. I'm sure he has. This is the first time I'm hearing and seeing Bernie Sanders write an op-ed, so it's curious to me. And I read probably 90% of it. Skipped through some parts. But this op-ed speaks to the overall topic of the results of a worldwide pro-Palestinian protest. Do you think Bernie Sanders will be having to write an op-ed like this without the protests, but with the genocide? Why would he write an op-ed? We've been killing in other countries, Iraq, doing things and killing thousands and hundreds of people in other countries all the time since he's been in office. So don't think that it's because solely on the atrocities, the genocide that's happening in Palestine. This also has to do with his legacy, with him not wanting to go down and totally torch his legacy, which I believe is sort of too late. But let's start what started this, and that is this here. This is what started all of this for me. I'm going to blow this up. And it says, breaking Senator Bernie Sanders, we are all complicit in what is happening in genocide. We are all complicit in what is happening in Gaza, and a large part of the tragedy is caused by the use of American weapons. Let me make sure this is not important. Oh, just saw somebody join us on our website. So welcome, that person that I can actually shout you out since you're watching. Bryce Smith just joined us on our website, hit that join button and signed up to be on our mailing list on our website. So welcome, Bryce Smith. If anybody else joins us through our website, it gives me a notification. I'll shout you out. How about that? All right, so back to this. Bernie Sanders says, we are all complicit in what's happening in Gaza. My question would be, who is we? Now, if you mean all of the government, yes. If you mean all of the Democrats, yes. If you mean all of the people who voted for or who would vote for funding, yes. If you're talking about all the people who use rhetoric in support of genocidal Israel, yes. That's not me. None of those categories fall on my lap. So just to clarify, we. But more so you, Bernie Sanders, and we're going to get to how you are more complicit than, let's say, me and the RBN audience. And because he goes on to say a large part of the tragedy is caused by the use of American weapons. And my first question to Bernie Sanders would be, didn't you know that on October 8th, October 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, October 13th, 14th, and so on, and all of November and all of December? Didn't you know that as ceasefires were being called? I need to refresh this. Hang on. My cursor's not responding. Okay, let's see if it does it now. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's Bernie Sanders. Let's get some reaction to this. And here's Nina Turner saying absolutely complicit. I don't know if he knows I think she's talking about them because she's not complicit. I don't think she's saying she's complicit unless she's saying she voted for Joe Biden and that's why she's complicit. Here, I love this reaction. Misty is my anger translator. Fuck you, Bernie. We are not all complicit. You are. As Comrade Misty always coming with the fire. I'm pretty sure I retweeted that. Yes. Oh, and she's got pretty good numbers. It's over 3,000 likes on there and 56,000 views. But let's get to this next part I want to get into. Now, this is what I tweeted, and we're going to go through this together. Bernie Sanders has some audacity to call for an end to the Gaza genocide after refusing to call for a ceasefire 30,000 dead bodies ago. Let's take a trip down memory lane via headlines to expose Bernie, the babbling warmonger psychopath. And that's what we're going to be doing here. Bernie Sanders. All right, so let's scroll down. I'm going to start from the bottom with this sort of presentation here. I tweeted all of these out. Oops. This is the last one. So got a bunch of these headlines. So Bernie Sanders is currently, I don't know if he's using the word ceasefire. I don't think he's using the word ceasefire right now. But he's using language that apparently equals ceasefire. Like if he's saying, to end all military action right now, if that's what he's saying, that's a ceasefire, essentially. We'll read the article to answer the question fully in a second, but let's read this article. I'm sorry, let's read some headlines. I'm losing my train of thought. Let's read some headlines about, this is literally just a week ago. And I think even still, he is still saying they have the right to defend themselves and they have the right to do certain military action. But here in this first headline, this is pre-Bernie Sanders' new pivot to save his legacy. This headline says, Bernie Sanders opposes squad, rejects permanent ceasefire between Israel, Hamas. Now, at one point, the terrible squad, the virtue signaling squad, was to the left of Bernie Sanders. At one point. Now, like I said, I don't know if he's officially come out and said, hey, this is what I'm calling for is a ceasefire. But we'll get to his article to answer the question of what specifically and what language he's using. I don't want to spoil it for those that have not read the article and wants to read along. But there's a lot more articles that are like this one here than there are of Bernie supporting stopping military action. There's a ton. And I clipped maybe 5 of them, something like that. And this is what I have with the caption of this when I say, at one point, even the Bernie disciples, known as the squad, was to the left of Bernie on occupied Palestine. Let's get to the next headline here. Then we have this one here. Cornel West hit Sanders for not calling for ceasefire in Gaza. Quote, pretty pathetic. And I go on to say, even Dr. Cornel West, who also has social democracy milquetoast politics, called Bernie Sanders out for his cowardice. Let's go to the next headline. Sanders doubles down against Gaza ceasefire in the face of progressive backlash. Now, we all remember, because I know I remember doing content back when he was I think he got protested on. Yeah, if I remember correctly, he received several protests. I think even some of his staffers, there was like an anonymous letter. I remember even Majority Report covering how Bernie Sanders had not yet seen the light, I believe is how they described it. But let's continue. Oh, actually, this is the one I was going to read. I'll read again. Sanders doubles down against Gaza's ceasefire in the face of progressive backlash. Now, let's go to the next one. Bernie Sanders' failure to back Israel-Gaza ceasefire upsets U.S. followers. And that's how it was. This is how one of the headlines to describe some of the protests, some of the unrest, some of the criticism that he was receiving because of his stance on the ceasefire. All right, so let's update this part here. All right, now let's go to, oh, actually, I didn't read what I said. Let me read what I said here, and then I think I need to go back to the other one. I don't think I read that one either. But on this one, I say, with all this evidence showing Bernie Sanders was a genocide enabler, he is now trying to salvage what credibility and legacy he has left, which isn't enough to feel, it should say feel, F-I-E-F-I-L-L, not feel, a shot glass. Like, I mean, if he has any left, for me, he has none. But for those that he may have a very small amount, that's what this article, this latest article where he's calling for an end is about. It's not about anything other than trying to save his legacy. Now, I read this headline, but I didn't read this part. This guy, Bernie, has turned his back on innocent women and children in Palestine. He has turned a blind eye to breaking a strike, and he has all but given up the fight for Medicare for all. And this is who Bernie Sanders is today. What a fall from grace. So now let's get to the actual article that he wrote. But you see his attempt here to try to pretend like he's doing something noble to call for an end to the Gaza disaster. Now, understand this, he's not saying a ceasefire. The disaster, what he's labeling disaster, is the civilian deaths. He doesn't mean stop going after Hamas, stop the military action. That's not what he's talking about based on this headline. But let's get into the actual article, and it's from The Guardian. So let's bring it up from The Guardian here. You might hear some, there's a lawn mowing service. I can hear them, and they're going to get closer and closer. So you may begin to hear them, but you'll still be able to hear me perfectly, but you might hear some background sound in just a few seconds here. The U.S. must act to end the Gaza disaster. And this is by Bernie Sanders, of course, in one of the professional managerial class NATO left publications known as The Guardian. And here we go. The United States must make clear to Netanyahu that we will not provide another dollar to support his inhumane illegal war. Now let's analyze this. You might be like, yeah, it's great. Bernie Sanders is doing something great. I'm gonna do my Nick impression. You know how he does impressions of people? It's great. But let's break down what he says here. The U.S. must make clear to Netanyahu that we will not provide another dollar to support his. You see how he's trying to make a distinction between a rogue leader in Netanyahu and disconnected from the apartheid state of Israel, the genocidal state of Israel. Let's continue. Many of us are watching with horror the severe humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza. Unfortunately, too many of my colleagues in the House of Representatives and U.S. Senate are choosing to ignore this reality and evade their congressional responsibilities. Is this real? This is serious. He's serious when he says this. Unfortunately, too many of my colleagues in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate are choosing to ignore this reality. Did we not just go through 4 or 5 headlines where Bernie Sanders did exactly what he's talking about here? Bernie Sanders ignored it all of November, all of the rest of October, all of November, and all of December. Let's be clear. what's happening in Gaza is not just some unfortunate tragedy taking place thousands of miles from our shores. The United States provides Israel with $3.8 billion in military aid every year, and the bombs and military equipment that are destroying Gaza are made in America. Really, Bernie? Because that's precisely what some of the protesters were saying when you were saying no to a ceasefire. That's precisely what the letter that your staffer sent to you. That's precisely what people were saying to you. In other words, we are complicit in what is happening. The government's complicit. Yeah, you guys are. And what's happening is unspeakable. My staff and I, you mean the staff that told you to support a ceasefire a long time ago? My staff and I have spoken in recent days with the United Nations, the World Food Program, and other humanitarian organizations struggling to deal with the disaster in Gaza. The bottom line is this: the coming weeks could mean the difference between life and death for tens and thousands of people. Really, Bernie? It couldn't have mean that 2 months ago? It wasn't life or death 2 months ago, Bernie? Didn't we lose tens of thousands of lives? 3 of them, as a matter of fact. 3 tens? If we are not to see a dramatic improvement in humanitarian access very soon, countless innocent people, including thousands of children, could die of dehydration, diarrhea, preventable diseases, and starvation. The world, or the WHO, predicts that the number of deaths for sickness and starvation could exceed the very high number killed in the war thus far. So you're meaning this can go from 30,000 to 60,000, Bernie? And you're still not calling for a ceasefire thus far in this article. And let's be clear. Now back to the article. And let's be clear. This is not a natural disaster. And to your point, Bernie, where it's out of your control. And to this point, let me say this, because I always have this same question when they're talking about the humanitarian crisis that's going on. I always am yelling at the TV, humanitarian crisis caused by who? You see this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, how are you supporting the very people financially, weaponry, that's causing the humanitarian aid, that humanitarian crisis that you now are pleading for? This is so schizophrenic. This is the direct result of choices made by political leaders like you, Bernie. No, none more than Benjamin Netanyahu or you, Bernie, the leader of Israel's extreme right-wing movement. So he's trying to do the Trump derangement and make it Netanyahu derangement syndrome. Let's continue. Hamas began this war with its horrific terrorist attack on October 7th, which killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children and took 240 hostages. Israel had the right to respond to that attack and go to war against Hamas. It did not and does not, however, have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, which is exactly what is happening. Bernie, we told you that when the death count was at 10,000. Bernie? When a death count was at 10,000, you were told these very things, and you was like, Social democratic politics is this, where you shout radical shit, but you deliver milquetoast. And that's who we have in Bernie Sanders. Let's continue, though, with his article. Oh wow, screws in your teeth there. Anyway, more than 25,000 Palestinians have been killed in this war. When I say 30,000 plus, I'm including the missing. They've been missing, and they still including them in missing. So the 25,000 he's saying here, these the ones they've been physically able to count, not including the missing. More than 25,000 Palestinians have been killed in this war and 62,000 wounded, 70% of whom are women and children. Thousands more are believed to be trapped under the rubble. At least 159 U.S. aid workers have been killed so far, more than in any previous war. Now, if Bernie Sanders has all of these numbers and had access to all these numbers all this time, but he is just now coming out and saying this, what does that mean about his advocacy now? What does that speak to? Is this a full-throated advocacy? How can it be full-throated if these are your reasons why you're now having a full-throated expression of you want to end this now? These same conditions existed when it was at 5,000 body count, when it was at 10,000 body count. The same conditions you're describing now, Bernie, that brought you to this. This is social democracy, though. It's like knowing shit is bad, but not really having the guts to really go at and really do something about it. You just kind of go like this. You know what I mean? It's kind of like being in a fight and you're going like this. That's the equivalent of social democrats' political posturing. Unbelievably, 1.7 million people have been driven from their homes, almost 80% of the entire population of Gaza. These are people who were already impoverished and who are now living in the crowded UN shelters or out in the open air in winter conditions. They lack adequate food, water, fuel, and medical supplies. Who's stopping them from getting that, Bernie? The same people you're fine with funding? How can you resolve this contradiction? How can you give money and weapons to the people that's creating the conditions of this humanitarian crisis? How can you be on both sides? Back to the article, and they have now no idea what the future holds for them. Excuse me. About 70% of the housing units in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. Most of Gaza's critical infrastructure has been made inoperable, including many water wells, bakeries, power plants, and sewage treatment facilities. Much of the area has been without cell phone service for weeks, making communication extremely difficult. Water is scarce, and what little is available is often contaminated. What I don't understand, and I'm pausing the article, is how, as you're writing this and you're describing the conditions, how at the end of this article, your conclusion is not a ceasefire immediately. How is that? Social democracy. They can literally see slave. They can literally see somebody in physical pain. And let's write a letter about it. Water is scarce, and what little is available is often contaminated. Public wells are operating at just 10% capacity, and only one of 3 water pipelines in Gaza is functioning. For several months now, children in southern Gaza are starving at 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day, or surviving. I'm sorry, I said starving. Surviving per day. Far less than what is needed, and that is in the area where the UN aid can be delivered. The situation is worse than ever. It's worse. I like what I said better, but the situation is worse elsewhere. But I do like what I said better there. So Bernie Sanders and the people who follow him, the majority reports, the TYTs, they know he's made a pivot. They know he wasn't for a ceasefire now, but now they're gonna prop this guy up and raise him above his head and carry him through the streets because he's arrived at a place that even they have been at for a long time. But they're still gonna praise him as some messiah. It's truly disturbing, to say the least, how they still follow behind this guy. But let's see if I don't think I had any more receipts for the Bernie segment, but I do want to just make sure. Yeah, I do not have any more receipts. So let's move to the next segment, and the next segment will be the bill. Okay, I guess I'll finish it here. I wonder if it says it this way. Bill Maher says college. Instead of reading it, let me just type it. All right, so here's the next segment. I'll read a couple of more of your chats, and then I'll get into this next segment. Bill Maher says college students love Hamas. I mean, Bill Maher is a complete buffoon, of course, but this is just the latest in buffoonery from Bill Maher, and this is what we're going to be getting into next. But let's read and see what all of you have said since the last intermission we've had. I want to kind of keep up and keep this more interactive and be more put more of your comments up here. Fetterman is worse. Yeah, Fetterman is pretty terrible. And what is an op-ed for a U.S. senator besides an attempt at public favor when he has literally said Congress people to end the crisis? Meaning he could just call them up. What's the op-ed for, sir? The op-ed is for the readers. The op-ed is not to reach any powerful people. You know them. This one from Dana: Bernie is so tone deaf. Absolutely. Here's a super chat here. I've seen this before. In other words, he wants to the rapid annihilation of Palestinians to become a low intensity war. He still wants genocide. And to your point, or I think that actually speaks to the point that I was making. Thank you for your super chat. Netanyahu has over 80% support in Israel, not approval rating support, but a support for what he's doing. The people in Israel want to see him doing this, to the point of the comment. So yeah. All right. So is there any other new super chats I haven't read here? Oh wow, I do got more. I had to hit refresh. Now they're here. All right, so here we go. Old Crow, thank you for the super chat, says, how do we, no matter what side of the fence we are on, get over this compromise of our elected officials? Is it a vote them out if AIPAC movement? I don't think this current system is salvageable. I don't believe it is. So you can, that doesn't mean America is not salvageable. I'm saying countries replace their constitution, replace their what their sort of guidelines or bylaws or whatever we call it, the Constitution here. They change that or update them all the time. So just think, we are still living and being governed by a document that was written over 200 years. I mean, that's preposterous. That's so ridiculous that there hasn't been tons and tons of updates to apply to even now, and adjustments to apply to even now. But shy of replacing the system, going from capitalism to socialism, you know, tens of, if not hundreds of amendments to the current constitution, inserting stuff like money, corporations are not human, only living, breathing beings, humans are, Homo sapiens are considered human. And it's a lot involved. Anyway, next super chat here, this one from Paul, and I think that's a typo. I think that should say J. J, we are close to nuclear war, but nobody cares. Whatever, it's mad. No real movement. Should watch threads scare you out, buddy. And I know it feels like this is you would have an accent to me because it feels like it's written almost in an accent, but I really do appreciate your super chat. Here's another one here. I've seen this before. Have I read this one? Yeah, I've read that one. All right, so I'm caught up on super chats. Let's now get into this next segment. I'm starving here. But before we do that, one last thing. Hit that like button. We are currently at 278 likes, my people. And we've had well over 400 people come through. Now 500 people. Now I'm looking at the update. Well over 500 people come through. So let's actually set our target at 400. So that's a good 125 that we're going to need. So please hit that. Close enough. I'm one off. So 275. The goal is 400. And we've had up to concurrent, or peak concurrent was 340. All right, so hit that like button. All right, so let's get into this one. This next one, ooh, I got something in my eye here. Now, remember, the overall topic is this. The results of worldwide pro-Palestinian protests. All of the segments we're doing today comes under that one banner of, this is the results of the protests that you've been seeing it or participating in. And this is another one. This is Bill Maher on his show lashing out specifically at college students who are doing a lot of this protest. So let's listen to Bill Maher. I don't think we'll listen to the whole segment. We'll listen to as much as we want. Let's listen to Bill Maher talk about the issues in this segment. Now, just for the sake, because I'm on the kid side, I'm gonna say I'm a kid. I'm not a kid, but I'm gonna say I'm with them. The kids are on the side of Hamas. Now, do we think Adam Schiff? Do we think Seth? I forget his name. Is it McFarlane or something? Seth's whatever his last name is, and Bill Maher. Do we think they don't know what's really happening at these protests? I actually think they don't know what's happening at these protests. I think they see what corporate media says is happening at the protests, and then they run with it. I don't think an Adam Schiff is down at a protest. Definitely not a Bill Maher is down at a protest. And Seth in his class, he's not down there at a protest. So they're just going off what they are being told. So let's listen to more, and then I got a couple of receipts. So all of you who thought this guy was based, he's just another Zionist. And understand, Hollywood plays a very important part in convincing the masses to go along with establishment point of views, establishment ideology. And now I don't know if they do it knowingly. Maybe some do it knowingly. Maybe some just buy into it, or maybe some just say, "Hey, I believe that this is our government, and I'm just gonna lend my celebrity to do what I can." But let's listen, and it is McFarlane. McFarlane, yeah, that's his name, Seth MacFarlane.
They film.
So the number that he's speaking to, and the numbers that all of these Zionists or Zionist adjacent people speak through to, are numbers given by organizations like the ADL, who considers literally protests on college campus as anti-Semitic. So when you say free Palestine, anti-Semitic. So when they say, "Oh, this has skyrocketed, that has skyrocketed," now there is legitimate anti-Semitism going on. But then you have the Zionists who want to use sort of emotion that's tied to an historical event like the Holocaust, which is pretty despicable how they use the Holocaust, Jewish heritage, and some of the atrocities that has happened to Jewish people. Is pretty despicable that Zionists use that to shield their Zionism, to make it seem like it's everybody and not specifically Zionists, because there's plenty of Jewish people who is not for this. When we're to go as far as the Orthodox Jews, and then you're talking about Jewish Voices for Peace. So, but let's listen. Adam Schiff chimes in. Of course, he's going to have something terrible. He's going to, they're laying the groundwork for him to be a senator, to fill the Feinstein seat. So, and he just had a debate where he wasn't calling for a ceasefire. Katie Porter, the semi-progressive who's pretty terrible. She's from California. She wouldn't, but I think Karen Bass was the only one in that California debate that would. It's just so funny how liberals are able to laugh about, because you understand they're laughing about people not supporting a genocide. They're making fun of people who are against a genocide. That's how you know you're living in an imperialist core, when on TV we have gotten so psychopathic with our understanding of reality. On TV, they're making fun of the people who are against a genocide. And that's the punchline. Just astonishing. I'll let him play a little. I'll play a little more of this. So let me just say this, and I'm going to run down. These are all issues I agree with. Fuck defund the police. If it's going up against a genocide, fuck defund the police. Defund the police. Fuck minimum wage. If the choice is genocide or minimum wage, fuck some minimum wage. You get what I'm saying? Like, what does this mean? That you're coming up with a bunch of things that our government should not be restricting us from, or we should have, but we should vote for that and not be a one issue voter on genocide. If you're going to be a one issue voter on any topic in existence, wouldn't you say it's genocide? And some people might say climate change. To me, how that's not genocide? That's a genocide of the human race. So genocide trumps all of that. Genocide trumps abortion rights. Sorry. Genocide trumps defund the police. But this is the framing that we get from the professional managerial class, that we get from these the bourgeoisie. And are we gonna get that stuff? Are we going to get abortion rights if we get Joe Biden in? Are we going to get some of the other things? No. Just a person who says, I want to do these things for you. But I guess, that's all it takes for Mr. Seth here. Is there anything else here? But I will read what Aaron says here. Let's read Aaron's tweet because it's a pretty good one. Bill Maher sees oops, I know you can't see it, but there's a pop-up in front of me here. There goes that lawnmower. If you hear it, you can hear me, but you might hear it in the background. Bill Maher sees Biden's shrinking support among young voters and concludes that it's because the kids love Hamas. To make his case, he cites Washington Post hit piece about so-called October 7th deniers. Dewashkin invented a fictional growing movement of people who believe October 7th was staged by the Israeli military. She purposely conflates this non-existent movement with independent journalists who point out what's reported in Israeli media but censored here. That Israeli forces killed some of their own people on October 7th. Dewashkin can't refute that, so she just resorts to smears. So this is Aaron Mate debunking what is said in the video with Bill Maher. Aaron goes on to say Maher, and that is Bill Maher, that is, then makes the false claim that Hamas filmed themselves committing rape and beheading babies. That's one of the most demented things anyone has said about October 7th. No easy feat. His guests, Seth MacFarlane and Adam Schiff, nod along and agree with him. Schiff, one of the biggest purveyor of Trump-Russia conspiracy, and then complains about disinformation. There's a lot there, but to the point, I'll take it from the back and go all the way up. The last point he makes about disinformation, Adam Schiff was one of the leading voices against Russiagate. And he wants to talk about disinformation. But look at this point here, because in the video, Bill Maher does say, we have the video. Didn't he say that? And what some people might be, and they're banking on people listening, go, oh, wow, they've seen the video, actually. There is no video of that. There is none. If there was video of this claim, one of the most used claims that they use the most to describe when they were trying to paint the worst picture, why isn't there footage been publicized? Why not? I think that's a legitimate question. But great points by Aaron. Let's now go to Pew Research poll. Or article. It's actually an article. It's not a poll. They include their poll in it, but it's an article. So this is Pew Research. And since they were talking about some of the numbers, I did want to go through some of the numbers. Bill Maher was talking about some of the numbers with Joe Biden. He's particularly complaining about young voters because they were all over corporate media. I vividly remember on Morning Joe, like Trump is going to win young voters. This is what they were saying about 4 months ago. Like he could win them. Like he's going to win this demographic, and he's winning them now. He's winning them now. And they have no idea what to do. Let's read a little bit. Americans more upbeat on the economy. Biden's job rating remains low. We're reading the second part. So we're going to scroll down to the Biden performance. This is the section we're going to start to cover here, because this is where we start to cover his polling, and it starts out telling you right now what it is. Currently, 33% of Americans approve of Joe Biden's job performance, while 65% disapprove. Biden's job rating has not been above 40% since April 2022. So we're coming up on a year that his rating has been at the bottom of the barrel. Bill Maher is an idiot. He sure is an idiot. All right. Thank you for the super chat. All right. Let's continue with the rest of the article. It continues to go on right here. Young adults are negative about Biden's job performance. Biden's job rating is low across all age groups, including young adults. Just 27% of adults ages 18 to 29 approve of the way Biden is handling his job as president, while 71% disapprove. That is insane. And the last time I covered this poll, it was 70, so it's upticked by a percentage point. It has upticked by a percentage point. All right, I have made it slightly bigger. I think I've made it. Yeah, I've made it slightly bigger. All right. So, and you can see here the graphic here. The disapproval is like the I guess I'm gonna call it gold, yellow, goldish color. I don't know what that else would that be. And then the darker color is the approval number going down. As it peaked at 59%, but it's been hovering in the 30s ever since April of 2 years ago, actually, April of 22. And let's continue. So we talked about young voters. So that's that huge constituency that he needs. And then let's go to another constituency, and that's the Black vote. And let's read this. Black adults are divided over Biden. About as many Black adults disapprove, 49%, as approve, 48% of Biden's job performance. Biden's job rating is lower among Asians, 39%, Hispanics, 32%, and white, 30%. So it's low everywhere. Views of Biden's personal traits have grown less positive. Biden gets his most positive ratings for being even-tempered and standing up for what he believes in. So that's where he gets his highest. Far fewer Americans describe him as mentally sharp. Look at that. Mentally sharp, 29%. Wow. Inspiring, 26%. That's not good for enthusiasm. Energy, this is another not good for enthusiasm, 24%. Those are terrible numbers. For the most part, perception of Biden's personal traits has followed the same downward trajectory. Biden legacy. Let me show you this other number here. Look at the views of the nation's economy here. It says American views of the nation's economy, while mostly stagnant for the past few years, are slightly showing improvement. Slightly more than a quarter, 28%, rate economic conditions excellent or good, a 9% point increase since last April. So it has gone up as far as the sentiment, at least. All right, you saw the numbers there. It's not a full segment on the numbers, just briefly going over some of the numbers. And let's see what we got left here. There's one more segment, and it is a brief segment. The Pelosi segment. Is it Pelosi segment? Yeah, Pelosi segment. Now, Nancy Pelosi got some gall, boy. So wait till you see this one if you haven't seen it already. Let's go all the way down to the first one here. Let's listen to Nancy Pelosi. Where's my banner for her? Right here. Nancy Pelosi says pro-Palestinian protesters are Putin puppets, basically. So let's listen to what she says. Now, I'm going to listen to the whole interview. This is a snippet.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now. As you know,
think some of these protests are Russian plants?
These are plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
So that sounds like freedom and democracy and free speech to me. Because let me ask the question, Nancy. Because you didn't say plants, because she asked the question plants. You're saying funding. So you don't care that the people have the beliefs. You just don't want them to have the funding to get buses to go to marches. They don't want them to have the funding to go make signs. That's what you don't want to have happen. You want to cripple the ability to collectively protest. You don't care about the opinions in a so-called democracy whatsoever. That's Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to come back to the video. Let me go to this headline here that covers this here. Then I'll go to that. Pelosi condemned by Council of American Islamic Relations for linking pro-Palestinian protesters to Russia. I'll read a little bit from this article, and this article is from The Hill. And I just cut out some parts here. I'll be reading along the side here. A short time after Pelosi's remark aired on CNN, the Council for American Islamic Relationship, or CARE, National Executive Director Awad condemned Pelosi's comment in a statement that referred to her remarks as unsubstantiated smears. Quote, and this is him speaking. This is the director, Mr. Awad. Quote, we are deeply disturbed by former House Speaker Pelosi's comments. He goes on to say, Rep. Nancy Pelosi's claim that some of the American protesting for Gaza ceasefire are working for Vladimir Putin sounds delusional, and her calls for the FBI to investigate those protesters without any evidence is downright authoritarian. He goes on to say, sadly, Pelosi's comments echo a time in our nation when opponents of the Vietnam War were accused of being communist sympathizers and subjected to FBI harassment. He goes on to say, hundreds of thousands of Americans, including many young people, progressive activists, and Jewish Muslims, Palestinians, and Black Americans have been protesting to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Millions more Americans support a ceasefire, including the majority of Democrats. Awad said Pelosi's remark show, quote, the negative impact of decades of dehumanization of Palestinian people by those supporting Israeli apartheid. He goes on and says, instead of baseless smearing those Americans as Russian collaborators from a former House Speaker, Pelosi and other political leaders should respect the will of the American people by calling for an end to Netanyahu's government genocidal war on the people of Gaza. Pelosi, who serves on House Intelligence Committee for a decade and continues to serve in a exo capacity, did not say on CNN what evidence she had to back up her claim because she doesn't have any evidence. That's why. And or they're taking time to manufacture some evidence. Let's get some response. Here's Sabby Sap saying they blame Russia for everything. Same old playbook. Pelosi needs to retire. We need new term limits for Congress. Here, Sabby. Here is Max Blumenthal. He posted this little snippet from her, and he says, here is Nancy Pelosi seated beside Zionist billionaire, declaring that if the Capitol crumbled to the ground, Congress would still fork weapons over to Israel. We don't need the FBI to tell us she's a vehicle for malign foreign influence. Listen to this. She's seated down. That's Chuck Schumer on the left, and that's her in the middle. Let's listen to what Max has.
I have said to people when they ask me if this Capitol crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid. I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. That's fundamental. I have said to people
I'm gonna let it
when
play
they
again.
ask me if this Capitol crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid. I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. That's fundamental.
That's crazy. When have you heard them say something like that in those terms about people, Americans? When have you ever heard a politician speak in those terms about anything for the United States citizens? Here is Asal. Shout out to Asal. She's from the international show that Nick used to put on. She was on his show a couple of weeks ago too. Calling for a ceasefire in Gaza is the overwhelming majority of the world message. This is how propaganda works. Divert attention from Israel, which is on trial for genocide, and use a familiar boogeyman to undermine protests and call for a ceasefire. Spot on. And Assault does work in propaganda. She analyzed headlines. Here's one from antiwar.com. Nancy Pelosi says call for Gaza ceasefire is Putin's message. Abby Martin says there is no dumber reality than the one Democratic leaders pretend to live in. Aaron Mate says, watch Nancy Pelosi claim that protesters opposing Israel's genocide in Gaza are spreading Putin's message, and that she wants them investigated for possibly being a Russian on Russia's payroll. This is what Russiagate has been about since day one, embracing Russian conspiracy theories to smear critics of the DNC establishment and its neocon foreign policy. Anyone who bought into a shred of it played into one of the most deranged and dangerous scams in history. Now, here, this is a more clean up version. Make sure. Yeah, this is a clean up version of the same thing. So I'll play it one more time. This is Nancy Pelosi.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have, but we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protests
is directly connected to what he would like to see. You mean like a ceasefire? Ceasing hostilities? Just think about how infantile our political appetite, our political understanding as Americans are, as the United States Americans are, when all they have to do is say Putin. Just attach Putin to anything and you won't take it. You'll believe, you'll have a certain connotation towards it. Just add Putin. This is Putin's message. Okay. What if his message is for peace?
are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now. As you know,
think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I say they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Feels so good to be in a free country. A lot of free going on the screen there, right? But that's Nancy Pelosi doing what Nancy Pelosi do. Let's watch and read some more reaction. Here's Nina Turner. And she's reacting to this headline. I'll show you the headline first. Pelosi wants FBI to investigate pro-Palestinian protesters for financial ties in Russia. And then this is the caption from the Rolling Stone. Nancy Pelosi suggested that Russia may be funding pro-Palestinian protesters who have been interrupting Democratic campaign events, saying that some calling for a ceasefire are promoting Putin's message. Now, from that, a quote tweet, Nina Turner, this is just as conspiratorial as anything the MAGA movement puts out there. That's a good point. 80% of Democratic voters support a ceasefire. Protests are happening because Democrats refuse to listen to their base. Absolutely irresponsible from the former speaker. I read that one to you already. And then I read Sabby's already. I read his. I read Saul's. Did I read them all? Oh, no. Here we go. Here's Pat, formerly the burner, now know Pat the socialist. Laugh out loud. I protested in front of Pelosi's house. Can't wait for the FBI to investigate my finances. Targeting protesters is fascist, by the way. That's exactly what we live in a fascist state. And Pat was one of the people, because remember in the video she says, I have some experience. They protested outside my house. She's in California. Pat is in California too. So Pat was one of the people protesting her. And then that's all the reaction I have saved for Pelosi. We still have Fettermen. What is this here? Oh, wow. And we have this. This is another good story. So I'm going to play this Karine Jean-Pierre. There's not a separate sort of segment. I don't need to go to like read comments or anything like that. Let's just read or play this interesting video from Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Where did I pass it? Right here. Listen to this here.
I got to bring this up because I know the president noticed it. He was interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters today at the UAW. This is the second time in the week this has happened. The death toll in Gaza is 25,400. A huge number of that is children. Does President Biden feel like he should be held accountable for a war that the United States has supported through weaponry and rhetoric?
I'll say this, and the president talked about this when he did his Oval Address, and the lives, innocent Palestinian lives that are being lost, these children that you just laid out, is devastating. Mm-hmm. We're talking about children being killed. We're talking about children who are now orphaned, and one life is too many. One life is too many, and it is devastating to hear. And as it relates to the protests, obviously the president, and you heard the president say this, is that we respect the rights of Americans to protest peacefully. At the same time, when you think about what happened on October 7th, when you think about the devastating attack that happened by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, we got to remember that. We got to remember that they are a terrorist organization that have said, leaders in that organization have said they want to see October 7th happen over and over again. So we're going to support Israel as they defend themselves. They have to do it. They have to do it in a more precise way. They have to make sure that they protect civilian lives. That's why the president is continuing having those conversations. And that's why we're making sure that we're doing everything that we can to see another humanitarian pause. We want to see another humanitarian pause so we can get American hostages home, so that we can get that much needed humanitarian aid into Gaza, whether it's medical needs, whether it's other important needs that they need to survive and to live. And so we're doing that. And we're going to make sure that those conversations continue. We have Brett McGurk from a National Security Council who was in Doha today. He was in Cairo yesterday. Yeah, being part of those conversations that are happening with the region folks, leaders partners, and the regional partners, and also obviously Israel and Hamas.
Oh, you're stuttering because you're full of shit. And you just said a mouthful of just unfiltered shit. Just came out of your mouth. These people, let me say it a different way. Joe Biden will lose in 2024. Joe Biden's losing in November. All the administration has is telling you in a different way the same policy they're going to continue. So all they're going to go is say is, I understand. Yes, humanitarian, we need to get these things in there. Who's causing the humanitarian crisis? If there's a humanitarian crisis, why aren't we trying to stop the humanitarian crisis? Isn't that the thing? And to the point that she made earlier, that we've been pushing them to be more certain. You've been saying that since 7,000 dead bodies. You've been saying the same thing. The Biden administration has been saying the same thing since 7,000 dead bodies, if not 5,000 dead bodies. You've been saying the same things. Oh, we've been telling them this as the death toll goes up. This is why the people in the bourgeoisie class, the people in the professional managerial class, the NATO left, this is why they, so much so AOC, I disassociate from what's going on in Gaza. I voted for it, yes, and funding and Iron Dome and all, but I disassociated from it. Same thing Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland said in the video they did. Disconnect yourself from the vote. Everything he does, it's AOC said the same thing. In a separate video. I'm talking 2 separate videos of AOC now. This is how they're able to have 2 separate things go on. This is how Bernie Sanders is able to say, we must stop this, but they have the right to defend themselves and keep giving them money and weapons. The social democratic approach that is displayed through the Democratic Party by people like Bernie Sanders and others alike, and whom the Democratic Party project to be. The Democratic Party project to be social democrats. They're not, but that's what they project to be. Truly stunning. Anyway, that was just a short little thing I wanted to show you. There was a second part. I guess I could play the second part. Let's play the second part. Yeah, let's play the second part.
People would say if terrorism and rooting out terrorism and ending Hamas's reign of terror is the goal here, is not slaughtering 25,000 people actually a terrorist recruitment ad for Hamas and destroying all universities?
Here's the thing, I hear that, and it's a good question to ask. And we do not want to see any more innocent lives lost. That is, like I said.
You notice how she tried to stop her from rambling on numbers?
I'm not going to believe the point, but I think there are a lot of people would say if terrorism and rooting out terrorism and ending Hamas's reign of terror is the goal here, is not slaughtering 25,000 people actually a terrorist recruitment ad for Hamas and destroying all universities?
Here's the thing, I hear that, and it's a good question to ask.
It's a good question to ask that you're not going to get a fucking answer for. But it's a good question to ask. Who says that in this context? That you're talking about dead? Oh, that's a good question to ask about the dead people. Who does that? So inappropriately placed.
And we do not want to see any more innocent lives lost. That is, like I said, children.
She has a tail. This person has a tail, and it's pretty terrible. Her eyes get very low, and they start to blink as she's telling lies. As she's telling lies and or telling something that she knows that is. Let me say it a different way. It's the same thing, but it's different. You're telling lies, and then you're telling bold-faced lies. So this is like a next level of lies that she's telling, but watch closely her eyelids. Okay? Now, you see here, look, you can clearly see her eyes as she's talking, right? She's listening. You clearly see her eyes. You see how she starts to talk when the second question, she damn near looks down almost the entire first couple of seconds. Let's watch.
I'm not going to believe the point, but I think there are a lot of people would say if terrorism and rooting out terrorism and ending Hamas's reign of terror is the goal here, is not slaughtering 25,000 people actually a terrorist recruitment ad for Hamas and destroying all universities?
I hear that, and it's a good question to ask. And we do not want to see any more innocent lives lost. That is, like I said, children, mothers.
On that particular part,
people.
when it says any lives lost, we don't want to see any more innocent lives lost. That's when her eyes flicker the most. If you're watching on your phone, you can't see this closely. Watch this again on a larger TV. You could see under her eyelids, her it's just flickering. So she's telling a bold-faced lie.
Like I said, children, mothers, innocent people being murdered, and that's why we're having those conversations. And as they are defending themselves, and we're going to support Israel defending themselves, they have it to do it within the international humanitarian law. It is important and critical to do that. We want to have another humanitarian pause. We want to have another one so we can bring hostages home to their family and get that humanitarian aid. One life lost is too many.
Well, and there have been considerably more than one or two lives lost.
Yes.
So she obviously, seeing the poll numbers, understand they need to start addressing this, and this is a friendly network. Don't let what Alex Wagner says. I have to ask you to. She feels offended that she has to even ask her these questions. That tells you how much of a real journalist she is. I'm sorry, I gotta ask. Why are you sorry for that? Those are the questions you should be asking as a journalist. But they know this is a dance. I know you're being brought on here. We need to play like I'm giving you some hard questions. I know this is a hard question you haven't been able to answer. You avoid, but because of the poll numbers, you need to start addressing these. And now they're coming on these networks and addressing these questions, but not really addressing it. They're just saying words, but not changing policy. I don't understand the strategy of the Biden administration, the re-election campaign. It is completely incoherent. It is completely I don't understand, what are they trying to accomplish? It's completely opposite to what they're trying to accomplish. You see what's happening in the protests. We're giving them more weapons around behind the back of Congress. What? No to ceasefire. Vote no to resolutions in the UN. Arab community come on and say, hey, what are you doing? Abandon Biden just in Michigan. No response to that, so they abandon Biden to 50 states. And then you have them trying to torpedo down our throats this immigration / funding for Ukraine and Israel bill. They're really trying to push this on the House and force them to take it. So that's another constituency. Now you see why he is nosediving in the Hispanic community. He's literally taking a nosedive in his Hispanic community. It's something like 67 or 68% disapproval. It's like he's doing things intentionally to turn off the most specific, more important demographics, like the young voters. Just doesn't make sense. All right, now this is our final story that we're going to get to in just a second. This is the Fetterman story, but let's read a couple of comments first before we get into this last story. Also, check out our website, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com, for a bunch of things. Let's see if anybody else joined. I'll shout you out right now if any other people join, because I got a notification when you joined earlier. Oh shoot, sorry, we have so many emails. Okay, here goes another one. Is it the guitar? I can't tell. VEG Vegetavar. I guess that's it. Vegetavar. Thank you, Vegetavar8@Yahoo. That's the email. Okay. Thank you. Another person joined on our website. Next thing is our Substack. Check out our Substack. Is our mailing list. Check it out. revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. If you want to get on our mailing list. If you need to contact us, here's our email, info@revblacknetwork.com. And here's the best way to support RBN. That is Patreon. Lowest membership is, I think, $3 a month. So if you can afford $36 a year, $3 a month, become a member on our Patreon. Now let's get to the super chat, starting here. Earth genocide committed by the West, US and Europe, averaged 60,000 million people. It's not surprising that they are nonchalant about 30,000 people. Yeah, because that's like 30,000 people. That's nothing for an imperialist, murderous empire. To your point, thank you for that super chat. Alex Wagner is married to the Obama White House chief. That old guy? Maybe she's older. Looks like an old guy. That's pretty terrible, but I guess to each his own. And that is, thank you for that super chat, Buckeye fan. This is another one from Unemployed Scholar. Remember, Uhuru are facing 15 years in prison having been falsely charged with being Russian assets. That is spot on. And they recently had not a good ruling in the trial, so we'll see. But it looks like they're still being railroaded. So, people, man, this empire is just relentless. Another one from Unemployed Scholar. So many in the American entertainment industry are outing themselves as enemies of Palestinian, indigenous people, and Black people. That is factual. Super chat there. Spot on. Sorry, Jay. Bad. Something should watch the BBC film Threads. That's where we are going. Is that Ishiri? Is that might be another typo there. Then I think I read this one. Same person from Paul. Thank you. And I think that's the British pound. I think that's, or a euro maybe, that monetary sign. All right, so let's get into our final thing here. This is very quick. It's just really just a short 25-second video and comment. But let's get into this final topic, and that is John Fetterman trolls pro-Palestinian protesters. Let me see who this is. Okay. All right. So it was for me, but I don't have to stop the show or anything like that. All right. So let's get into this one here. And we start and finish with this. There's only one receipt for this one. And that's actually, I'm going to get some more reaction, but it's one receipt. The other ones are just reaction. We start with RBN brother Nick, and it says the Bernie Sanders left enthusiastically endorsing John Fetterman while ignoring all the warning signs from Black leftists and Palestinians about him was the final nail in the coffin for the fraudulent Bernie movement. And Nick quote tweeting this tweet that reads, John Fetterman spent the night standing on top of a rooftop waving an Israeli flag at protesters in Pennsylvania. That's what he did. So he doesn't have better things to do. So here it is. It's less than 30 seconds.
Fetterman, you can't hide. You're supporting genocide. 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 Fetterman,
we're gonna let it loop.
You're supporting genocide.
Let's let it loop. We'll let it loop.
You're supporting genocide. Fetterman, you can't hide. 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 You're supporting genocide.
There you go. I wonder how. I'm gonna fast forward it so you can see the actual flag. I'm waving it, but that's it. So he's being called out and being protested against, and it's about a genocide. And he's saying, waving the flag still. So nothing about the 30,000 dead people, but they want you to be up in arms about so-called 1,200 people. It's such a bizarre. So bizarre how they have all of these descriptive words to describe 1,200 people dying, but they lose their ability to think of adjectives when it comes to Palestinian deaths. It is just one of the like when you're watching the coverage, that's probably one of the things that stand out the quickest when you're watching coverage on this. Is just they fall off a bridge of adjectives when it comes to describing the Palestinian struggle. But here's a headline about it. This one is from the New York Post, and it says Senator John Fetterman waves Israeli flag from his rooftop after pro-Hamas protesters gather outside his PA home. Now, this is the New York Post. When they say pro-Hamas, that's because they're a conservative outlet. But I did want to use, we do have to kind of use a conservative outlet because, let me see if I can go back. Go back. Because that's really all the sort of news outlets that are covering it are all conservative, because the constituency for a lot of the liberal outlets would not want a story, or at least it would not be phrased in such a good way like that headline. So let's float through a couple of headlines here about the story. How do I do this? Sort by date. Yeah, let's do that. Here goes Blaze Radio. John Fetterman, who supports Israel, responds perfectly to pro-Palestinian protesters chanting outside his home. So that's another, and that's Blaze Media, and that's with what's the guy with the goatee? Got kicked off of Fox. Anyway, I forget his name. That's his thing. And then we have the stream. Biden declares, let's just go to the ones related to the story we're covering. The Daily Wire, John Fetterman responds when anti-Israel protesters show up at his house. Defiant, and here's another one, legal insurgents. Defiant John Fetterman waves Israeli flag from rooftop in face of pro-Hamas protesters at his home. You notice how I said the only people, a lot of the outlets who are covering this are all conservatives, and you can see that in the headlines. John Fetterman waves Israeli flag as protesters chant genocide. We'll end with this one. World Israel News. Watch Senator wave Israeli flag and respond to pro-Palestinian protesters chanting outside his home. And as you notice, none of those headlines came from a corporate media outlet that you and I know, like a CNN and ABC. None of them. They're not really reporting on it. So, all right. So that's going to do it for today. That's all of the stories. Let's go back to Twitter and do a run through of my news feed to see if there's any breaking stories that I'm unaware of, because my show is in a smack dab in the middle of the day. There is a lot of breaking news that could happen. Here goes one. No, that's not one. This is Palestinian it says Pelosi to protesters outside her house, go back to China where you came from. Oh, what? Wait, let's play that. So this is Pelosi saying that? Wow, I never seen this before. She's telling go back to China where you came from.
Most of your constituents walk beside you. Stop the genocide. Stop the Holocaust. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire.
Wow. So this is recent. This just happened 4 hours ago. I thought she said yesterday that their headquarters were Russia. Yeah, because now she's saying China. Good point, Glenn Greenwald. That's Glenn Greenwald. Wow. All right. Oh, by the way, tomorrow is Nick's birthday. For Nick's birthday stream, Carl Za will be one of the guests tomorrow. I probably will be joining him tomorrow at some point. Also, so yeah, that video is Nancy Pelosi saying go back to China. And it says, according to Blue Anon, cult elder Nancy Pelosi, American opponents of Israel genocide must be working for foreign adversaries. Because she says, go back to China where your headquarters is, to pro-Palestinian protesters. So they're China and Russian protesters, I guess. Is there anything else? Protesters go off on Nikki Haley. Let's hear. Here goes something happened to Nikki Haley, a protester. Wow, I'm loving all this protest energy. Let's listen.
Only way we will get that done. None of us want new wars. None of us want new wars.
No, and we're sick of the wars. We want America first.
She don't know what the fuck to do. What do you say to that as a Republican? Trying to get Republican voters and you're not in New Hampshire. What do you say to that? Yeah, we do want America first. She's a war hawk. What does she say? Let's listen. Man. Now, if he said something where she felt like she could make a point and get an applause, she would. Instead, she stays quiet and walks away because she was engaging him first. But when he made that point, which is a good point in MAGA world, she had no rebuttal for that. And I wonder if Donald Trump will use this if once he hears about that. That would be funny. Let's see if there's anything else. Nothing there. Nothing there. Cold Pink talking about it too. So yeah, that is a recent thing of the video. That's not at all old. All right, I don't see anything else. I've seen the Nancy Pelosi thing 3 or 4 times, so that looks like that's the most popular video that's going on right now. I don't see anything else. What is this? That's Norm. Oh, did you see this? Supposedly Snoop Dogg is down with and that's what Jimmy Dore is shouting out. Snoop Dogg is down with Donald Trump now. I guess he squashed the beef. He's not falling for the derangement syndrome. So they're back friends. And if you recall, a lot of hip hop artists before he was elected, they rapped about being Donald Trump. It was a song. Oh, who was that guy? Was it Young Jock? I'm the black Donald Trump. That's the first line. So when the whole concept of him becoming a racist became a thing, what did Puff Daddy think? Because Puff Daddy was good friends. He was in commercials with him. And Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart, all these celebrities who were chummy with him. And it looks like some of them are coming back to being chummy with him. Jay, just so you know how I can't help but comment, always block, keep me subscribing. It says, Jay, just to know, can't make comments, always block, keep resubscribing. They keep taking you off and you having to resubscribe. That's what YouTube is doing while we're telling people to always double check that your membership, that you're still subscribed to us. All right, that's going to be it. Like I'm going to start trying to make sure I do at the end of every show. Put in the chat where you're from, beginning now. Where you're from, put in the chat where you're from, and I will play it over our outro video. And the outro video I'm going to play. What outro video I'm going to play here? I love this one, so let's play this one. I'm going to play the DNA test in Israel. So let's play this video as an outro video. It's a 3-minute video, so I'll put your comments up for about half that amount of time. We'll probably watch the first half, and then the second half I'll put your comments up. But I'll put the comments up that's shouting out where you are watching and listening from. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed the show. Give me a thumbs up on your way out.
DNA tests are illegal in Israel. Ask me why.
It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
I mean, duh. It doesn't take a PhD or an article from a Jewish newspaper to tell you that Caucasians practicing a religion aren't native to a place where people have been brown for millennia.
This TikTok caused a storm online, with many debating what his results, which show no trace of being from Palestine or the Middle East, despite being Jewish, mean. Yet, in the state of Israel, getting hold of a genealogical DNA test is highly restricted. Yet Dov Aharonoff and the Jerusalem Post reported in 2019 that Israel's genetic information law blocks people from buying them from local pharmacies.
I guess boomer Zionists think that if you just throw enough money at troll farms and you don't let people Google 23andMe in Israel, that they'll forget that they're not Middle Eastern. Like, it's not Jesus of Williamsburg, it's Jesus of Nazareth, right? I mean, that's fine. Like, there are dark Jews. There's Jews from Brazil, there's Jews from Ethiopia, and up until the 19th century, everybody was living in Palestine pretty peacefully. Well, I guess until the Nakba, when they got displaced or killed alongside the Muslims and the Christians. I guess even back then, in the middle of the desert, if you have a brown neighbor, I guess property values go down. I don't make the rules, but they sure as hell are racist as So then, if Caucasian Jews don't come from the Middle East, where do they come from? I do not want to be called anti-Semitic, even if I've got Harvard in the background. So I'm just going to let another Ashkenazi geneticist tell you where you come from.
Surprisingly, GPS took us to northeastern Turkey. At first, we did not understand the results, but when we looked at some old books, we found 4 ancient villages named Ishkenaz, Eskenaz, Ashenaz, and Ashkuz, names that may be derived from the word Ashkenaz. This place resides on a hub of trade networks. This is where Silk roads and other trade routes converge.
That's Aaron Al-Hayek. He's a Jewish geneticist from Johns Hopkins who wanted to figure out where Caucasian Jews come from because, you know, like map out genome, get ahead of diseases. His contact in Israel is Dr. Aurelia Oppenheim. She's a geneticist in the University of Jerusalem, and she runs the anti-aging department. And for a while, the government called both of these two Nazis. Would you like to know why? Because they both figured out where Caucasian Jews come from. Wink, wink. They're 40% Turkish, and newsflash, 40% Mongolian. As if the lactose intolerance didn't give it away. Like, hold on. Do you understand what this means? Like, okay, sure. Like, you don't have any ancestral tie to Israel, but like you don't have yellow fever. You're just dating your own race. Like real talk. What do you see in this picture? Like, is it a pierogi or is it a dumpling? Like, you say gefilte fish, I just see fish balls without the soup. Like, brother!